All right. Parsha's Eikev, 980. We didn't start Eikev yet. Okay. When you're from Chicago, you got to live in the past. Otherwise, you won't survive.
The Block Box 2010.
Three times. Yeah. They had a good run. They had a good run, and it should have been better. They should have had a dynasty there. Somehow it messed up. And now they're getting this Connor Bedard.
Bedard.
Yeah.
I'm so hopeful.
He's really good. He's really good. He's really good. This is a generational player. All right, page 980. V'haya Eikev tishvunas hamishpatim elu shmartem v'asisam osam v'shamar Hashem lokecha l'chasa brisa sachesed asher nishba l'avosech. If you listen to these statutes and you keep them, and Hashem will maintain the covenant that He made with your fathers. Now, first of all, you'll notice there are three different terminologies here. There's tishme'un, which means you should listen. Ushmartem, which means you should safeguard them. It's a different word to, how does he translate that? You hearken. Hearken. I mean, we're not in Shakespeare here. Tishme'un is you listen. Ushmartem is you obey. Vasisam, and you perform them. So first of all, there are three levels here. There's learning them, which is tishme'un. You got to learn it. And then there's ushmartem, which is to review it, because the only way to maintain Torah is by reviewing it. The Gemara says Torah is as difficult to acquire as gold and as easy to lose as glass. That means it's difficult to acquire. Gold is difficult to acquire, and glass utensils break very easily. So Torah is as difficult to acquire as gold. It's as easy to lose. You got to review it. You got to chazer it. You got to review the Torah. Hey Adam, take a chumash. They take chumashim. You got to review it, and then after that, vasisam. Then you're going to perform them. So that's why you have three different terminologies over here. Now Rashi has over here. Rashi brings down straight from Chazal. The Haya Eikev Tishon, the very first Rashi on the page, right column. Im ha-mitzvos ha-kalos. What's the word Eikev? Eikev means, how does he translate it? When you hearken. This shall be the reward when you hearken. You see, it's a hard word to translate in English. In English, the best word for Eikev is on account of. It's a difficult word, very difficult to translate. So Rashi brings down the Medrash, Im ha-mitzvos ha-kalos she'odam dosh be'akevav. The easy mitzvahs that a person tramples with his heels. If you listen to those, tishme'un. So you see that there's a human nature is sometimes we feel to do the big things. We want to only do the big things. The little things, like little things like talking during davening, skipping parts of Psuke de Zimra, maybe a little bit of Lashon Hara, things that we look at as little things. Whereas the big things like diving into the water to save somebody, or what do you call it, or keeping Shabbos, that we understand is important. But little things like, there's a really important muktzah is how important. All right, I'll move it fast, right? So nobody will see. I'll do something. I'll take it. So the Torah comes along and says those are to the contrary. The little things are the ones we're more likely to trample. And then you also have this attitude that people have. The most important thing is to be a good person. I've heard people say that, it's a matter if I put on tefillin or if I do or don't eat shellfish. What's it? As long as I'm good to people. Well, that's a false attitude. The Torah's attitude is Eikev. Even the little things that a person has to do. The big things, anything can do. Anybody can do the big, and we do the big things. If you see a guy who's dying, for sure you're going to help him. But the little things, that's what you have to do. The little things are difficult. Somebody once said, Jews through history have given up their lives. All through history, where the Crusades and what do you call it, the Spanish Inquisition, where the Jews were put to the sword, and they were given an option: either you bow to the cross, or you die. And the Jews gave up their lives willingly. But somebody very wise once said, "It's easier to die as a Jew than it is to live as a Jew. The trick is to live as a Jew." Right? To die as a Jew is a one-time thing. You die as a Jew. Okay, I don't say it's easy, but a person dies as a Jew, they die as a Jew. But to live it, they said that Eichmann, who was hung by the Israelis when they had the trial for Eichmann. So apparently, I didn't know this. I've read the transcript. I've read parts of the trial. I didn't know this. I just saw this recently. That Eichmann at the trial said he knew Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. because he had heard Jews saying it thousands of times. And when Jews were about to die, they said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Ekev Yisrael, said he knew Shema Yisrael. So he had heard it. A Jew dies and a Jew expresses his loyalty to God. Jews have always given up their lives. A Jew's not going to worship idols. But to live as a Jew, that means every little detail, that the tefillin have to be placed properly, and that you can't say certain things. You have to be, and if the food you're not sure if it's kosher or not, you don't need it. That's what Eikev is referring to. Mayor, what are we going to ask?
When I understand, if it's then what will be reward in the translation? It says this shall be the reward. It's not Eikev reward.
What's that?
In the translation, this shall be the reward.
That's why the Eikev is because he's going. See what the art school is translating it based on the entire pasuk. He's not translating the word Eikev. The word Eikev doesn't mean reward. The Eikev means because you do. It's such a hard word to translate. Eikev, because you do. So because you do, there will be reward. But the art scroll is forgetting about it. I don't. Yeah, the translation is a funny translation. In any event, on the heels of. Good. On the heels, right? We say that. That's an expression in English. Good. On the heels of. Good. Very good. Okay. Take a look at pasuk Yud. Let's go on. Yud Gimel. V'ha'ivcha, Hashem will love you. Ubeiracha v'irbecha. Ubeirach pri bitnecha friad masecha. He'll bless the fruit of your stomach and other your children and your produce. Digoncha tiroshcha v'yitzarecha. Shgar alafech v'ashotzanecha. So you see that the first bracha here is the bracha of children. Because the first bracha on the list is the bracha of children. And after the bracha of children, what comes? The bracha of Parnasa. Right? Then comes the fruit of your earth and your produce and everything else. So again, it's that attitude that people have that, well, I'll only have children once I'm set up financially. Right? And the Torah says that's not the right attitude. And remarkably, there's a statement in the Gemara that when a male is born, ba zachar, when the male is born, ba zachar, ba kikar biyado, he brings his bar of gold in his hand. The child is born, and he's born with his bar of gold. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, listen, if he supports us, he can support them too. If the fact that he supports us is a miracle, or that we see as a miracle, he can support them also. I had a friend who once said, hey, I gave him mazel tov, his son was born. This is a guy who was struggling financially. I said, mazel tov. He said, yeah, where's the bar of gold? He said, doesn't mean you're going to see the bar of gold right away. But at the end of the day, the Gemara also says, sometimes people are so worried about their children. How's he going to make it? It's human nature when a guy gets married, and a guy takes on the yoke of a family, he's going to do whatever he needs to support a family. We don't have faith in our children because we forget that we were also once children. And that when you take it out, well, people are capable. People will do what they have to do. People will make it. But the Torah is telling you the attitude is, what are you going to do? You're not going to have children until you have parnasa. So at what point is it enough that, how much it takes? What's the study? How much it takes to raise a child to 18 years old? Like $800,000 you spend on a kid till he's you got to sell them when they're young. That's a lot of money. Just to raise a child, what you feed them and tuitions and everything else takes all. So it's all a miracle. I haven't got $800,000. It is more for a Jewish child. It's a lot more for a Jewish child because the Jewish children you pay tuition, and Jewish children you pay for kosher food, and Jewish children you pay for camp, and Jewish children you pay for a bar mitzvah, and a Jewish girl you pay for her wedding. You're darn right it costs a lot to raise Jewish children. Just kosher food. What does the kosher food cost? The meat prices. Okay, now the meat prices are out of control. There's a whole big issue with the meat. But in general, meat prices were always about 8 times the price of non-kosher meat. Yeah, I remember going into the supermarket. You see the non-kosher hamburger meat at 39 cents a pound or something like that. And the Jewish stuff's always $2.49 a pound. That's nothing under, that's ridiculous. They're kick it up. Well, you go to McDonald's, you can get a meal at McDonald's for $2. Right? Yeah, the Jewish hamburger joint in New York. What does it cost? It costs for a burger and fries, you're going to pay $12. Easy. So I'd say, of course it costs more. So the whole thing is a miracle. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. And then you got to buy it. And then on top of it, you got to buy an esrog. Look out. Yeah.
How do people in Kol manage to
But they do. You see, we have not read about anybody who is starved to death in Kolo. Some people have it easier, some people struggle. The question is a good question. Some people, remember, there's an ideal that you're willing to strive for. You're willing to invest because there's an ideal. How do guys make it through medical school? There are people married in medical school. They struggle a little bit because it's an important enough goal for them. Whereas where people in Kola, it's a important enough goal. Some are supported, they're supported by father-in-law. Some have they may have money saved. There may be in a savings account that their grandparents put aside for that. I found that everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got that. A rich uncle dies and leaves a pile for his nephews, or they kill him, or whatever it is that, one way or another, everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different story. And some people struggle more, but they're worth it for the cause. They're willing to, it is so important, they're willing to do it. How did people went to the gold rush in San Francisco in 49? When in 1849, people went to San Francisco for the good of the cause. Look what they went through. Half of them didn't even make it because they died on the way. Half of them died while they're there. Half of them never made any money. And people were willing to rough it for the good of the cause. You got all sorts of people. People went to try to get to Antarctica. What's his name? Mackleton with his ship that got stuck for 2 years on the way for the good of the cause of getting to Antarctica. People that sometimes even if a cause is important enough, people are willing to sacrifice for a cause. Shackleton, okay, Shackleton. I was close though, give me that. What's her name? Shackleton? Yeah, Ernest Shackleton. What do you call it? You got the people. I thought it's not Mackleton. I'm thinking of a football player. There was There was these guys who climb Everest, and they're willing. And people get killed for the good of a cause. I've seen these guys what they go through. Mountain climbers. Sometimes it's important enough. If Torah is important enough to a person, so we're willing to do without, and it's an ideal. That's why you have to find a young lady if that's your goal in life who has the same goal. I once had a guy went out on a shidduch. And he liked the girl, and he came back, and I asked him about the shidduch, and he said to me, yeah, she's this, she's that, the other, and she doesn't mind if I learn in Kolol either. I said, she's not for you. Drop the shidduch. She said to me, why? I said, she doesn't mind if you learn in Kolol? That's what you're looking for? A girl doesn't mind if you learn in Kolol? You said you're looking for a girl who wants you to learn in Kolol. A girl doesn't mind if you learn in Kolol. You have to know what your own. Somebody once said, "How do I know? I want to find the other half." Before you find the other half, you have to find the first half. You have to find the first half. You have to know what you're looking for. And does this girl fit what you're looking for? Does she have the same life goals as you? So if you have two people who have the same, it doesn't mean it's easy. I was in Kolo for 5 years, full-time, 2 years part-time after that. It's not easy. It's not always easy. Sometimes things get tight, and it could get tense. But you also have to stay focused. But a lot of times they get tense in a lot of other areas in life too. Actors go to Hollywood, they eat apples and wait on tables for 3 years, waiting for their big break, which often never comes. But they're willing to do it because they're pursuing a goal. So people sacrifice for a goal. The only difference is that here the goal is Torah, to live a Torah lifestyle, raise Torah children. Okay, take a look at Pasuk Tes Vav. Then the Torah gives another blessing. If we're good, Hashem will remove all illnesses. All of the symptoms, how does he translate madve? The maladies, that's a good word. The maladies of Egypt, the terrible maladies which you experienced, lo yesimam bach, he will not place them on you. He will place them on your enemies. That's a big bracha, that we won't have any illnesses. The illnesses will go on the enemies. Now, if you'll notice, there's a slight difference in the terminology. It doesn't say lo ninasein bach. It says lo yesimam bach. And then it doesn't say v'yesimem b'chol sonech. It says unesanam b'chol sonecha. What's the difference between yesimem, lahasim, uliten? 2 words for putting. He won't put them on you, but it doesn't say lo yitneim bach. It says lo yesimam bach. And the other one says unesanam b'chol sonecha. You see the difference, gentlemen? You see the difference in the pasuk, the difference in the 2 words? The first, you want to take a chumash over, take the big blue book, page 980.
But Ted is more to give.
Okay.
More to put.
Okay, what's the difference between put and give? Good. You notice the difference? Good. So
To give is to receive. Someone has to receive, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Good. So one of the foreship says, Yesimam is temporary. For the Jewish people, it won't even be put on us temporary. Unisanam is permanent, and your enemies are going to get them permanently. That means that means you're going to get, what do you call it? The enemies are going to get, the enemies, that if we were deserving, there would be no illness. I told you that there was once a book called Sefer HaRefuos. There's a book of cures, which King Chizkiyahu, eventually, he hid the book. He put it in the Gniza because people were relying on the book instead of relying on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Theoretically, if a person has arthritis, you open the book, page 1069, arthritis, get some medical weed, you're good, right? That's the cure, right? You got ingrown toenail, right? Or page 554, what do you call it? Convert, right? Because non-Jews never get ingrown toenails, right? Only Jews, a very Jewish malady, ingrown toenails. Right? Whatever it is, whatever, you got all the cures, and it was all put away. But theoretically, if we were good and we were deserving, we go back to Adam HaRishon before the sin. What happened to Adam HaRishon before the sin? It was the perfect existence. Adam HaRishon before the sin, there was no illness in the world, there was no death in the world, there was no impurity in the world. Right? Remember we said the Kohen Gadol symbolizes that. The Kohen Gadol symbolizes the idea of perfection of existence. That there's no illness in the world, there would be no bleeding. A woman got pregnant and gave birth the same day. And it was painless. Could you imagine painless pregnancy? Nowadays they take an epidural. They have a shot in the spine, which is itself no walk on the beach. The alternative is worse. But there would be a perfect existence. Nobody would be sick. No broken bones, no limping, no coughing, no sneezing, no nothing. Do you know why we say Gesundheit when somebody sneezes? Why do you say Gesundheit means you should be healthy? It says there's a medrash that says that people in the old days, when they sneezed, they died. That's how they died. They died by sneezing. Their neshama came out, something like that. Which is, I assume, people didn't use snuff in shul in those days, right? Because Baruch She'amar, right? And he gives a sneeze and he's gone. So I assume, but there'll be nothing, no ailment, no maladies whatsoever, Okay, one second. I want to show you something else though. Take a look at Pasuk Tezayin. Ve'achalta es kol ha'amim asher Hashem lokecha nosein loch. You will consume the nations that God gives you. Lo sachos eincha alehem. Do not have compassion on them. V'lo savor es Elohehem. Do not worship their gods. Ki mo keshu, it's a stumbling block for you. The Torah says you're going to go in, and now you're going to fight a war, and Hashem says destroy them. And the 7 nations had 2 choices. They could either leave or die. Those are the 2 choices. God says destroy them. The nations in the land of Canaan were the seat of idol worship in the world. They were the root, the source, the power pack of idol worship. Egypt was the seat of immorality. Canaan was the land that lends itself to submission. That's what the word Canaan means. What does the word Canaan mean? It comes from the word hachna'ah. Hachna'ah means to submit. And therefore the land of Canaan was the land that had idol worship and all the various perverted forms of idol worship. But that's where you had the concentration of submission. Now, if you walk, I've used this example many times. If you go to the old city of Yerushalayim and you walk towards the Kaisel, in a radius of about a square mile, in an area of about a square mile, you basically got almost every religion of the world represented there. You got Greek Orthodox and Armenian and this one and that one and the other one. You got everything there. The Muslims, this is Muslim. You got everything there. Why is it that Israel is like that? Because the land of Canaan, it lends itself to submission. Some people submit to the right things, some people submit to the wrong things, but some one way or another, it's a very religious land. And then no coincidence here. The land lends itself to that. If you go to Kansas City, you don't see a lot of people going to Kansas City and starting to worship idols. If they go to Kansas City, go to a ball game. You don't worship idols in Kansas City. You go to Las Vegas, you gamble. You go to Eretz Yisrael, you get religious, right? One way or another. Why? Because it's Eretz Canaan. So God says, destroy them. You can't leave them around because they will affect you if you leave them around. You could have the choice. They could leave. You could leave or you could die. But there's no alternative. You can't stay in the land of Israel with the Jewish people. That's for the 7 nations. Now, one of the Mefarshim points out over here that we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all merciful. Yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu says over here, don't have mercy. And that it would be against the will of God for a person to be more merciful than God. And the person has to know that. Don't be more merciful. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is merciful, and if he says to destroy them, we have to destroy them. And not destroying them is not an act of mercy. Not destroying them is an act of cruelty to ourselves. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now, the classic example here is vegetarianism. To be people ask all the time, according to the Torah, are you allowed to be a vegetarian? There's, is that what it's called now?
Vegan.
What's it? I never know what is a
Then
vegan.
it's milkish products and eggs.
But
Vegans
is
eat
not-
non-animal.
Not even
sources.
honey. They won't even eat honey. Vegans.
Vegans won't even eat honey.
No.
What? They just eat plants and do drugs. Okay, but no animals. Okay, so what do you call it? So are you allowed to be a vegetarian or not? There are three types of vegetarians. There's one vegetarian who simply does not like meat. I know people like that. They just don't enjoy meat. They don't enjoy. I know somebody who doesn't eat chicken at all. They just don't like it. They only eat beef. They don't eat chicken. And other people who won't eat meat at all. They just do not enjoy meat. Okay, they feel they don't like the taste. They feel heavy from the meat. They feel it affects their system. Whatever the answer is, you don't like it. You don't have to eat it, especially on Shabbos. Shabbos is for oneg. Shabbos is for delight. So Shabbos, if you don't delight by eating it, you don't have to eat it. Yontif, which is simcha. Yontif is to samachta b'chagecha. You should eat a kazayas of beef, because the Gemara says, what's that? Oh, the difference is simcha is happiness, oneg is delight. Oneg is pleasure. Shabbos is for pleasure. Yontif is for simcha. And the Gemara says, Ein simcha ela bebasar v'yayin. Simcha is with meat and wine. When there's a simcha, when there's a celebration is meat and wine. Shabbat, like a wedding, a bris, meat and wine is the ideal. You could use chicken at a bris, you could even use fish, because usually in the morning, early in the morning. But ideally it's meat and wine. Shabbos, I'll get to you 1 second. Shabbos is delight. People serve gefilte fish on Shabbos. Do you like gefilte fish? Eat it. You don't like gefilte fish, you don't have to eat it. There is an idea of eating fish on Shabbos, but if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. That's delight. Okay, so a person says, I don't like eating, I don't enjoy meat. That's perfectly okay. Another person comes along and says, look, I like meat, but I don't like the way the meat industry treats animals, therefore I'm protesting the meat industry. You want to protest the meat industry? That's fine. I'll take your portion, right? Because your protest isn't going to do much. It's not going to have much of an effect on the meat industry. You don't enjoy meat? You don't want to eat meat? Ideologically, because of the meat industry? That's fine also. I don't recommend it. I recommend more becoming a member of the meat industry, then you get rich. But if you don't enjoy it, okay. And they do treat, I think, what's it called, veal? I think the veal, they close them in a cage or something to fatten them up. It's not pretty, right? But that's why I don't go there. I just see the veal when it's on the table, right? But if you'd see it, you probably wouldn't eat it, right? Okay. Then there's the third guy who says, I think it's wrong ideologically to kill animals. That is anti-Torah, because the Torah says from the time of Noach we are allowed to eat animals, and to a certain extent we have to eat animals. There is eating animals on Shabbos, Yontif, korbanos, sacrifices, right? Sacrifice. So people say, well, I think it's wrong to kill animals for sacrifices. That same person is wearing leather shoes and a leather belt, and may not be a vegetarian, right? They think it's killing animal for sacrifices. According to the Torah, sometimes you have to. And therefore, if you're a vegetarian because you think ideologically you know better than God, then that smacks of heresy, of apicorsis. So the Torah says over here, where God says to destroy the people, don't be more merciful than God. God knows better. Yeah, question, go ahead.
Is the oneg of Shabbat more for yourself and the Simcha Yom Tov is more for Hashem, or are they equal?
They're both for us in order to serve Hashem. In other words, the human, you're asking a very important question. Why do you go to a Shabbos table? It's the spiritual day of Shabbos, and you go to a Shabbos table. There's never been as much food on a table as there is on a Jewish Shabbos table. And just when you think they're done, they're bringing out some more, right? They just keep bringing it. You know, I told you, I heard about a girl, secular girl, came to the first Shabbos she ever experienced. So she comes to the table, and they serve the fish with the dips and the what do you call it, and they sing a little bit, then the women get up to start cleaning off the table. So she helps clean off the table, she goes to the closet to reach for her coat, and she's ready to leave. They say, no, Andrea, that was just the first course. You ain't seen nothing yet, sit down. That was just to whet your appetite. Part of the idea is because a human being, even in business, they have a concept of wining and dining people. I mean, I know that I'm trying to sell you a product. You know I'm trying to sell you a product, so why do I got to take you to a fancy restaurant? The answer is it works. And the Gemara says, Godol, God, it works. That's what they do. They take God Gesundheit, Godol Legima. I hope you stay. Yeah, don't worry, you'll be okay. He got nervous. Godol Legima. A bite of food is a major thing. Shemekareves is a lavovos. It brings people closer. When you go out with somebody, you have a piece of, you don't just sit at an empty table. A guest comes in the house, you give them food. Why? Why is that? Because the mood of the person is affected very much by the food. And then we use that in order to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Simcha and Yontif and the Oneg on Shabbos, it's all meant to be to get to a higher cause. That's the idea. We all know that food is something that's how people, it creates a festive atmosphere. Okay, now I want to show you something. There's something I really want to get to over here. If take a look at Pasuk Chaf Aleph. So here the Torah says about destroying these nations, and then Pasuk Chaf. Okay, Hashem says the nations that are there, 6 lines from the bottom. Watch this. The Games Hatzira. I guess the article translates a wasp or a bee. How does he translate it?
Hornet swarm.
Hornet. What's the difference between a hornet and a wasp? Which is worse? Which is strong? Which is worse? Huh? A wasp is worse than a hornet?
Really? I think it's the other way around.
There used to be the Green Hornet on TV. The Green. Do you remember the Green Hornet?
Yeah, of course, Bruce Lee.
Was it Green Hornet?
The Green Hornet.
Or he was Kato.
Kato, yeah.
He was Kato. Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. Wow, this is important things you learn in Ohr Somayach. So it says, "V'gam." I just remembered the Green Hornet. "V'gam esatzira yishalach Hashem l'kachem." Hashem will send the wasps after them, the hornets after them. Aravona nishorim anistorim mipanecha. Hashem will first. Your enemies are going to be hiding from you, so Hashem will send wasps after them. Now look what Rashi says over here. What are these wasps going to do? You know, these hornets, whatever he calls it. It's the left column of Rashi, 3rd line. You're going to enjoy this. Hatzira, page 980, left column of Rashi, 3rd line. 980, 3rd line. Hatzira, min sheretz ha'of. It's like a flying, like a little flying creature. That's what a sheretz ha'of is, like bees and wasps and that sort of thing. Shehaisa zorekes bahem mara. It would shoot the poison at them. Umisarastan, it would castrate them. Umisame eseneim, and it would blind them. Bechol makom she'ani starim sham. That's bad. I'll get to you 1 second. The wasp would come after them, and the wasp would do some nasty things to them. So the commentaries ask, I mean, that's they just sting them and kill them. So the Rashi seems to say the wasp would shoot poison at them or sting them and inject the poison. It shoots poison or it injects? It injects. Yeah.
Shimon Deitch of the Living Torah Museum translates Tzira as scarabs. Those Egyptian beetles.
Ooh.
What are they?
Scarabs.
Egyptian beetles?
They have like the symbolism of Egyptian beetles that they have on all their tombs.
Like in the Mummy, the movie.
I've never seen. I don't know an Egyptian beetle.
These scarabs are like these flying beetles that shoot poison.
Nice. Oh, okay. They shoot it. They don't, because Rashi translate really as shooting. He doesn't translate as stinging. Zorekes bahemara. Now, zorekes in modern Hebrew is an injection is a zrika. So it could be. So I don't know if Rashi. That's scarab. That's what it's called. John Paul, Ringo, and Scarab. Right? What do you call it? The Beatles. So who do we leave out? George. So what do you call it? It would do 2 things. It would castrate them and it would blind them. All right, why does that have to happen, right? So I saw a brilliant explanation. One of the versions says, who are these? These are the Canaanites. All these 7 nations are the Canaanite nations. They are descendants of whom? Cham. Yishmael is also a descendant of Cham on his mother's side, because he comes from Egypt. But they are descendants of Cham. He had 4 sons. One of them is Mitzrayim, and Yishmael comes from Hagar, who comes from Mitzrayim, who comes from Cham. So you're correct. Yishmael is he's got Cham blood in him. These 7 nations come from Cham. What did Cham do when Noach came out of the ark? What did Cham do? He saw his father's, the Torah says, he saw his father's immorality. And according to one opinion in the Gemara, he castrated him because he didn't want him to have a 4th child. Because there were 3 children. Shem, Cham, and Yefes, who were going to divide up the world. He didn't want to divide it up into 4. So as a punishment for what the ancestor did, the double, the Mida Keneged Mida, he did 2 things to Noach. That's what's going to happen to his descendants. And I think that the lesson is that everything that a person does has an effect on his descendants one way or another. There's always something, there's always a residual effect. It may take a generation and it may take 4. Sometimes you see in your grandchildren, I want to tell you, you see in your grandchildren sometimes good things, and sometimes you see things in your grandchildren where, I know where he got that from. He got that from my son. I know where my son got it from my wife. So sometimes you see things and you're like, some things you're very pleased at. And that's really the test of what you've achieved, is what you see in your grandchildren. What you see in your sons is not always accurate. What you see in because your children are intimidated by you. When they go out on their own and they get married and have their own children, the values they instill in their own children, that's when you see, okay, there I succeeded. If your son teaches his son to go to shul, he doesn't have to do it. He's not intimidated. He doesn't need you anymore. He's on his own. He's living on his own, and he's instilling that as a value. That means you instill that as a value. But what your own children do is not always accurate, because your children, when they're in the house, they're under your thumb. They're often nervous. I got my father. Am I getting my father's approval? My father doesn't, disapproves. But once they're on their own, then you see where you succeeded. That's often the case. I had my own sons. Every Shabbos, when I put on my tallis, when my kids were growing up, I put on my tallis Shabbos morning. Because Shabbos morning they're in the house still. I put on my tallis, and I would kind of wrap them under the tallis, and I would sing a tune while I'm wrapping. I had them under the tallis. So then my sons were doing that with their sons. So one time, the first time I did it with one of my grandchildren, who was old enough to understand, I did it to him, and he looked at me like, "Where do you know this tune from?" I said, "Hey kid, this is my tune. I taught it to him. I taught it to your father." Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't there a Gemara about these flying hornets that shoot the venom and stuff?
That's what Rashi's getting it from. Rashi's getting it from the, what do you call it? Rashi's getting it from most of Rashi's getting this from the. Where does this come from?
Yeah, that's it.
Right. There's, right. Most of, where is the? I lost the Rashi here. Where? Right. That's coming straight out of Gemara. Very good. Listen, when people say Rashi says, most of the time, probably 95% of what Rashi says is Rashi's quoting Gemaras and he's quoting Midrashim. Very little of what Rashi says is just Rashi made, right? To make up. Rashi's brilliance was not what he said, is what he selected to say. Rashi was a selector. Rashi mostly selected it to try to enlighten us. Okay, now, one second. There's one more point I want to get to here. In Pasuk Chav, look at the next one. Lo sarot mipnehem, do not fear them. Ki Hashem Elokecha b'kirbecha kel gadol v'nora. Do not fear them, because Hashem is in your midst, the great and awesome God. So, one of the Varshim says over here, it sounds like, the plain meaning is obviously you don't have to be afraid of them because Hashem's on your side. That's the plain meaning. So obviously you got nothing to be nervous about. It's like, that's the plain meaning. But several Mefarshim point out over here, and it's brought down in the Chovos HaLevavos. The Chovos HaLevavos says there's a guy walking through the desert, and he survives through the desert. And somebody said to him, weren't you afraid of the animals? There are all sorts of wild animals and snakes and all sorts of stuff in the desert. Weren't you afraid of all those stuff? So the guy said, listen, I am so consumed with my fear of God, there's no room to be afraid of the animals. I'm so consumed with my fear of God that how could I can't, and it's not that I don't want to be afraid. There's no room to be afraid. So I have two examples. I was once walking in my neighborhood when I first moved in. We're going back close to 40 years ago. So we were living in a newly developed area, and it was right out near the wilderness. So in the morning, there was a beautiful dirt road. And early in the morning, I put on my shoes. I went through a jog through the mountains. It was gewaldic. Put on a headset, went for a jog in the mountains out, and it was beautiful. The second day, that was the first day. I was really happy with that. I really jogged. The second day, I went for a jog, and then I come all the way around, and I'm heading back up towards my area, which is built up. I'm still in the kind of the unbuilt area. And about 30 yards away from me, as I come around the turn, there are these two massive desert dogs, which is exactly what I was thinking. Oh boy, right? And the desert dogs looked like they had not had breakfast yet, right? I hadn't had breakfast, they hadn't had breakfast, and I didn't want it to become a joint breakfast, right? So I come around and I froze, and I see these desert dogs. So the first thing I started doing is muttering under my breath. There's a pasuk we say, "U'lechol b'nei Yisrael yecheratz kelev l'shono." The pasuk that says when the Jewish people went out of Egypt, none of the dogs wagged their tongues at them. They didn't bark at them and wag their tongues. So that's supposed to be a skula that protects you. So you say, "U'lechol b'nei Yisrael yecheratz kelev l'shono." I didn't want to rely just on that and then go just walking past and like, "Yo, bros, how you doing?" So there was a barbed wire fence. I crawled through a barbed wire fence to get to the other side so I could avoid the dogs. At the point that I was crawling through the barbed wire fence, I had zero fear of the barbed wire fence. I don't normally do that. I don't normally crawl through barbed wire fences. There was a barbed wire. I didn't get cut up. I kind of negotiate. It's not something I would have done, and it's not something that I was even nervous about, because the fear of the dogs was a lot worse than the fear of a barbed wire fence. So that's what the Torah is saying over here. If a person is consumed with fear of God and awe of God, there's no room for fear of anybody. You're afraid of other people? I haven't got room to be afraid. I'm busy being afraid of God. You go to a dentist and he's going to give you a shot of Novocaine. A shot of Novocaine. There are more pleasant things in life than a shot of Novocaine. It's not terrible. It's not terrible, but it's not the most pleasant thing in the world. There's only one thing worse than a shot of Novocaine, though, is a root canal without Novocaine. Right? And the root canal without Novocaine is so unpleasant that I'll take the Novocaine. And when I'm taking the Novocaine, I'm not thinking about how bad it is. I'm thinking about, well, this is going to get me out of the pain of the root canal. True or not true? Unless there are people who I know, I actually have a friend who does all dental work without any Novocaine at all because he doesn't like the shots. When I go in there, I tell the guy, give me the legal limit. I've asked my dentist, what is the legal limit? Give me the legal limit. I don't want to feel anything. And if possible, they got laughing gas, that's even better. But that's good stuff. My dentist even told me that when he studied, when they would finish their midterms, he's from Denmark, he said when they finished the test, then they would all go up to the lab and treat themselves to some laughing gas. So it is possible in life that one fear, so the Torah is telling you over here, look at the pasuk, lo sarotz mipnehem, don't fear them, ki Hashem Elokecha b'kirbecha, Hashem is in your midst. That means we have the fear of Hashem in our midst. Kel Godol v'Norah. Again, the plain meaning is obviously that you have nothing to worry about. Hashem will take care of you. But at a deeper level, it means I've got no other concerns in life. I only have one concern. My concern is consciousness of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, being aware of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, we'll stop here because you guys are going away.
What was that word you